Thank you for joining XROM, India's first AR/VR focused podcast. And today, I'm really happy to have with me Declan Dwyer, who's the co-founder and managing director of Graviton Interactive, an XR studio based in Sydney, Australia. So, Declan, really appreciate you taking time and being part of Hubble podcast. Why don't we start with a small, brief introduction, background, your love for AR, VR, and VPS systems?
Sure. I've been building things with augmented reality over the last few years. In particular, I'm definitely interested in virtual reality as well. I think that's probably where my interest actually started more so, is building things on VR headsets, especially after seeing the original Oculus DK device and getting really, really excited and seeing how the potential of these sort of devices is just going to be absolutely huge and have huge impacts across a number of industries, and eventually I think that it'll have an impact on everyone's life. So that definitely is what got me started, and I think that led me to experimenting with AR technologies as well. And I think at the moment, one of the reasons why I'm so excited about AR technologies is I think that they will reach a very wide number of people already, and it's going to have an even greater impact potentially than some of the VR technologies at the moment. Not to say that virtual reality is not something that I think is also really cool, but yeah, both of those things I think is sort of what got me started and interested in building applications and games for VR and augmented reality.
Both VR and AR still has its own pros and cons. Virtual reality is like it kind of you wear your headset and you're like, you don't know what's happening in the outside world. Though with the mixed reality glasses, you can peer through, see through devices that we have currently. But AR is we already have the interface. We've got billions of devices, the phones, through which you can experience augmented reality content. And yes, I mean, fair enough to say that AR is something which is currently like where the money is at, for whether it's consumers or brand, because we already have the interface and there is no friction. You don't need to go acquire a VR headset per se, so you can experience AR through your phones. Your company, Graviton Interactive. Would you like to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we're building mostly augmented reality experiences for brands. As you mentioned, I think that's a really good application, and it's not necessarily about the AR technology directly. It just happens to be that it's a really interesting way of creating engaging content. Like augmented reality experiences, I definitely think more interactive and engaging than other types of traditional advertising media, and I think that's what really attracts brands, because it definitely creates a genuine sense of engagement with audiences.
Maybe talk about this experiences that can be done with AR, and specifically, because what are the experiences that has caught your attention, which you think are really, really out there, cutting edge of innovation for which brands have used? And maybe also some of your works, from Graviton Interactive that you guys have done and helped brands in engaging consumers.
Yes, something that caught my eye recently is I think it's Rimmel. They did a Snapchat activation where they turned the London Tower Bridge into a liquid. I think it's for mascara or some sort of makeup brand. And I think that's really catching and very interesting to engage with. And that's why I think that VPS technology is very interesting for creating these types of experiences where you actually tie things to a physical location. And that's something that I'd love to chat to more about, is how you can tie things to a physical location. In terms of what we've done, we've worked with a number of brands building mostly games. I think that games are a really great way of using augmented reality to interact and engage. I think that Scavenger Hunt is one of the ones that we've been working on most recently, and being able to go to locations and find different places where there is a unique augmented reality experience.
Right. So with AR, there's marker-based and markerless AR activation, and then there are these activations which can be anchored into your physical world, in your physical locations. And you use VPS for that. So maybe can you talk about first, maybe explaining what VPS is? How do you build that? How do you go about creating this AR experiences which can be anchored into your physical world?
Yeah, no, great. No, I think that's a really important point is talking about what even is VPS. VPS is a visual positioning system, similar, I guess, in acronym, different in technology to GPS. VPS is using the camera's features to recognize to recognize a location. There's a number of different platforms that are making use of this. Niantic is building things that are using this. Snapchat has elements like what I was mentioning before with the bridge, where you can use these custom markers. That's a form of VPS because it's recognizing the exact location from a number of different angles. The one that I am most familiar with and the one that I've worked quite a bit with is Immersal. And Immersal's technology allows you to scan a location and then anchor content to that position. What I really like about Immersal's technology is the flexibility of being able to capture a different spot using consumer devices like phones and then also high-end LiDAR scanners. So it's very interesting to me, the number of different VPS technologies and how you can currently use them.
Lovely. I mean, we just caught up very briefly recently at the and I caught you at the Immersal booth. Talk a little bit more about this VPS systems and maybe share some experiences that's built in tandem with Graviton being the content partner and Immersal. Maybe talk about some of the activations that you guys have done.
Yeah, great. So we've been using it to build different types of games where they've been activated on particular buildings and particular locations. And I think that's an interesting way that we've collaborated with Immersal. But one of the things that we've been talking about more, and one of the things we've been working on, is using augmented reality in stadiums. And this is something that I was just at AWE Asia, and we were talking about how you can bring this content into a stadium by scanning the location, and then placing content within that stadium. So we've worked with Immersal as the technology provider to create these underlying maps of different locations, and then we've built the content and the experience on top of that. So I think the really interesting thing about using their technology is that you're not locked into a certain platform like Snapchat or a certain application. You can build their service and their technology into many different things, including web AR. And I think that's what's really interesting to me.
Declan, how do you go about mapping the space out? You mentioned, you use these phones, LiDAR technology. Is it the team from Immersal which goes out and scans the place, or is it for public access where it's you leverage people to how do you go about mapping areas, and what are the areas that's been mapped currently at this point in time?
Sure. So the Immersal in particular, their mapping can be done by anyone who has a developer account with them. And the mobile phone mapping that I mentioned before is through an app, which you walk around and you capture multiple images from different angles of the area that you're trying to create this target for, and then you map out this space by uploading these photos to their server. So the app has a button which you send it to their server. It creates this visual positioning map file, and this map file is what the content is being localized against. And this is the same workflow, very similar workflow if you're using like the LiDAR capture method, where it's using the Leica BLK portable handheld scanner, and then it creates this detailed map of the environment, which then gets uploaded to Immersal, and then they provide you with this same localization file that you can build into your application. so once you have that map, there's two different types of localization with using their service. You have on-device localization, which is where you use that map that we've created by scanning the environment all on the device and not sending any of your images to a server. I think that's what makes their technology interesting to some of the other ones, because for privacy reasons, you're not actually uploading any of your own images to the server. So you're only using the map that's already been created. And once that's downloaded onto the device is localizing against that map and doesn't actually need to send any of the images from your phone. And if that is not a concern and you're trying to solve a different problem, they also have on-server localization, which is where you send images from your phone and then they tell you where your phone is within the space.
Is there an incentivizing like something for users who kind of map out the space by immersive?
Not currently. It's definitely interesting you mentioned that, because as you've probably seen, as Niantic has their Wayspot, these different areas, and I guess people are creating this map of the world, and I think that's a very interesting approach. There's nothing saying that you couldn't make something like this using Immersal. Immersal's platform is very open, and you can upload these maps and make them public, so other people can use them for creating their own AR experiences. But currently, I don't think they have like an incentive sort of model. Like Niantic, I think through their games actually encourages you to create these different Wayspot locations.
Right. You had created some VPS-based navigation solution for a train station in Sydney and also for a stadium. Can you talk a little bit more about the challenges of building these activations?
Yeah, sure. So definitely scanning a very large amount of area, like a large area like a train station, requires careful planning of how you go about mapping out this space, whether you're using a LiDAR system or a mobile phone. And initially, when we started creating this navigation system for the train station in Sydney, we tried to map out the whole station in these really large maps, where we tried to upload a lot of images and create these very, very large point clouds. But we found that these in particular didn't seem to work as well as when we created multiple maps that were aligned to each other. And this was also done using Immersal. So Immersal actually allows you to upload create multiple maps and then align each of these maps to each other by detecting overlapping features within these maps. So once we created these multiple maps, we found that our navigation experience within the train station was more stable, and it was able to more quickly recognize our location and then ultimately where we told it that we wanted to go to within the train station.
Can you dwell a little bit more on the applications, specifically when it comes to VPS-based AR?
I think like navigation is definitely one of the ones that's very interesting, and I think is a really good use case. I think that turning games is building these location-based games is another use case that I think is really exciting. So you can turn the outside of a game into a pinball machine, and we built something like this where we turned a game into turn the outside of a building into a pinball game where you have to go to that location in order to play and engage with the game. So that's another thing that I think is interesting. I think that as we're talking about at AWE, stadiums is a really interesting spot because you can do a combination of these different applications where you've got this very detailed map which can be used to create these fan engagement experiences where the audience is participating in maybe a shared AR experience. So their position from where their seat is aligned to their position in the stadium. And also getting services finding different types of services within the stadium, I think is also an interesting use case of VPS. And then another use case of VPS that I think is really interesting is the industrial applications. So being able to scan very large warehouses and manufacturing facilities and being able to create these different types of experiences within there, whether that's for training on a particular machine or factory line, or whether it's navigating within this factory. I think that there's many different locations and places where it can be useful. I think it's just, I think of it just as a tool of being able to locate things accurately within the environment.
What are the challenges you think we need to overcome to map the entire globe?
So I think that and this is definitely like one of the ones that I've seen probably as the closest thing is Google is very well positioned to map the entire globe with using their already existing maps as the underlying basis for localizing where you are. And Google, their geospatial API does this in a way. It's not a hyper accurate VPS, but it does localize where you are based on what the camera is looking at. So I think that's probably an example of how something would be achieved. And then the other way, which you mentioned before, is when we can capture or incentivize users to help us scan different types of locations. And I think when doing that, I think if you approach it in that way, it has to be made aware to the users of what you're doing. So it has to be part of a game or part of some incentive, and it has to explain that they're helping to create these maps in some way, because it would be uploading some data, whether or not that's images. That would depend on what technology is being used and how these maps are being created.
Miki Matsuda had created this film called Hyper Reality almost a couple of years back. I don't know exactly when, and it painted a picture of a world which is completely overloaded with data.
I've seen the one you made.
Where you look left, right, anywhere, and these digital overlays. So it kind of painted a dystopian view of what the world could look like. If we go overload with the digital overlays on a physical world. Do you what are your thoughts on something like that? I mean, do you think in the next?
Yeah, I think that's like possible. That's some of these things are sort of possible. That's obviously the extreme end of how much things was built into the environment. But I think that when designing these experiences, it's important to consider the end users and the human experience and the human element of it. And I don't think that something like this, where there's overload of data, is necessarily a very good experience. And I hope that things don't look exactly like this. I hope that there's parts of this, though, like having contextual information about a certain location in AR, I think is great. And I think that's an interesting application. I think that any type of AR experience has to have some sort of purpose and has to have some sort of value, whether that's entertaining or whether that's providing some sort of data. If there's too much or it's just about the advertising, then I don't think that it is 100% useful to someone consuming these content. So I hope that it's not exactly like what is in that film.
Right. So we live in a capitalist world, and everything runs top down, hierarchical, it's centralized, where money is which moves everything. So I hope that we don't get into the future, because yes, today I think AR, VR, MR, it's such a potential technology, and we're just learning what it could do. I mean, today a Web 2.0, it's got so many problems. I mean, those like buttons. I mean, I'm glad that YouTube took away those dislike buttons. But just imagine you walking down the road and you have these restaurants or shops and stuff like that, and there are people posting anchoring digital dislikes or maybe nasty comments. So. Yeah, I really do think about, what would happen when these glasses I mean, when we transition from carrying technology to wearing technology, where the entire world becomes a screen by or glasses or lens, because even at AWE, there was Expansio, which is working on AR lens, and Mojo Lens is also working on that. So yes, I sometimes you worry about the technology. Is there anything that worries you about AR, VR, MR? I mean, of the downsides.
I mean, yeah, definitely things you've already touched on, and the thing you were describing about disliking restaurants or something. The thing that immediately came to mind is from the TV show Black Mirror, where people are like blocking other people and they're disappearing entirely. But I don't think that technology hopefully will be used for anything like that. I do think that we should consider how people use how the end user is using the technology, and if any of the things we build is useful and to these people. I think that AR glasses, in the way that we've described, are still a very long way away from being like a mass adopted product. I think that having seen many of these different glasses technology, I don't think that they're necessarily a comfortable experience to wear all day long. I do think they're awesome for specific use cases, and I think that's what currently a lot of these companies are targeting. Like in enterprise, being able to overlay data on certain tasks is great, and it's like making it more efficient and potentially more comfortable to use these things. But overall, I haven't seen anything super concerning about AR and VR. I'm very optimistic about that. It's going to be a good future with these technology.
I really hope so too, but I somehow feel that the Black Mirror is almost like a documentary of sorts, because whatever that's been shown in Black Mirror, it somehow it's coming true. What comes next for you, which is Graviton Interactive and also immersive?
So building more different types of VPS experience is definitely something I'm really interested in doing, and particular offering more types of AR in stadiums, because I think that that's a really great place to make use of both AR and VPS technology. So combining those things. And also the other thing that I'm really interested in and have been working quite a bit on is web AR and web XR technologies, and being able to make AR even more accessible than just being on your phone. So being able to access these AR experiences without even having to download an app, and I think that's really interesting. There's several different companies providing solutions, like Eighth Wall, which was at AWE Asia last week. But yes, also WebXR, because I think that open AR web standards are important, and I hope that these continue to be developed and make these different experiences accessible across a number of different devices.
Right, completely agree with you. I mean, it'll take away the friction of downloading applications, the web AR, web XR solutions. My last question to you, Declan. India is a huge market. And we've got some great things going on, when it comes to the software developers, in the space of AR, VR, MR, Web3 and things like that. What do you think can be done for creating a bridge between Australia and India, which benefits both Australia developer startup community as well as India?
Very, very interesting. Lots of different things. I mean, I hope that it can be achieved through a number of different ways. I'm sure that at a country level or government level, at the very top level, I'm sure that there's opportunities to collaborate on making it more accessible to work between both of these places. But in terms of companies, I think that there's lots of opportunities to collaborate and build these different experiences. Not entirely sure of the fine details of how we would implement such things on a bigger scale. I definitely am aware of working with people and creating some of these AR experiences already between Australia and India. And I definitely think that that's going to grow. I think that's going to grow. I don't think our relationship is like declining. I think that hopefully it's growing and it's getting more exciting in terms of technology and what we're building. That I think, yeah, that's my general sort of thoughts on that topic.
Post-COVID, what has happened is that the entire world has become more digitized. I run a small team of 10, 11 member team, and my team is distributed around the world and distributed around India also. I mean, the reason being because the geography doesn't kind of restrict you, with developers. I can access the finest developers, not just around India, but around the world. So that's one option. And I believe that Korean government is doing such a cool thing by shaping its XR ecosystem. I hope there is more efforts from governments, and there is so much opportunity because if we join hands rather than waiting for the governments or the big tech to kind of like take this ecosystem forward. I mean, there's so much individuals, developers, and startups can do. So I hope that there is more interactions and there's more ways where we can create business opportunities that benefits Australia as well as Indian startups. And on that note, wish you the very best. And to my listeners, if you like what you see in here, then please press the subscribe button. Until next time, see you guys. Bye-bye. Thank you. Thank you, Declan. Really appreciate this.
Thank you so much.